Thank you, Shelley. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
You can. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Terrific. Okay, first, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all meet today, including where I am. And I'm actually in Melbourne, Shelley, so my affiliation as a professor is with the University of Western Sydney. And I'd like to pay our respects to the elders past, present and future. Now, all working, fantastic. Also, thank you to the organisers of the conference for inviting me to speak, and a warm welcome to you all and special guests in the audience. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing, and I wish I was there with you. So sorry I'm doing it this way. The good news is I've actually caught a bit of a cold, so in hindsight, it's better I work from home today. Now, my talk will focus on the health benefits of trees, particularly in urban spaces. There is growing evidence that trees and urban forests are beneficial to human mental and physical health. In today's talk, I will be addressing why we depend on trees for survival, the basics, how trees cool our communities and the health implications, and I'm sure you guys know a lot about that, but I'll then refer it to how it benefits the community health, how trees boost our physical and mental health, protect us from allergies and infections, mitigate air pollution, and maintain our connection to country and nature. Good. So let's start with why we depend on trees for survival. Now, this slide is very basic. Trees play a critical role in supporting human health and well-being. We actually need trees for survival. For those who studied biology and science in high school or tertiary classes would remember that the leaves of the trees and plants pull in carbon dioxide from the environment and use the energy of the sun to produce organic compounds such as glucose to feed the tree, and as a byproduct releases oxygen in the air through a process called photosynthesis. Trees produce much of the oxygen that we humans breathe, and we cannot survive without oxygen and trees. Might seem simple, but when people are chopping down trees in their yard, they may not realise the importance. So from the air that we breathe, oxygen moves into our lungs, into our body, to every cell in the body. We use the oxygen to produce energy, and as a byproduct, we release carbon dioxide back into the blood and into the atmosphere through our lungs. So essentially, humans have a symbiotic, interdependent relationship with trees for survival. We cannot survive without trees. The Earth's forests, as you all know, absorbs about a quarter of all carbon dioxide that humans expel into the atmosphere. Trees capture and store carbon. In contrast, when trees in forests are logged or lost, carbon is released back into the atmosphere. Hence, trees play an important role in rising carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere from all sources and helps curb climate change. For this reason, we need to ensure urban planning protects as many trees as possible, as they are essential to human survival. Furthermore, trees are important for our food supply, for human food supply. So pollinators such as bees depend on trees for healthy habitats. Pollinators are involved in producing a third of the global food supply, while in some cases the wind and rain blow pollen between plants. In most cases, bees and other insects or animals are necessary for this process. Consequently, pollinators such as bees, butterflies, moths, birds, and mammals such as bats, together with trees, are essential for a healthy food supply for human survival. Trees are also critical for supplying, purifying, and protecting fresh water, and critically important for improving water quality. And this is an example. The Sugarloaf Reservoir in Victoria is a good example that relies on trees for purification of, might help if I move the slide, of water supply to the northern, eastern and central suburbs of Melbourne. Trees cool our communities. Let's talk about the health benefits. Trees play an important role in cooling urban environments, particularly during heat waves, which subsequently benefits human health. This summer, many parts of Australia were experiencing hot days, hot nights, and frequent and prolonged heat waves. In February of this year, for example, you guys in Western Australia broke record temperatures in some areas of Western Australia, nearly up to 50 degrees Celsius. And Perth is on track to also break May temperature records with this continued dry spell continues. And I too wish you rainfall this weekend. Okay, so what does this mean for people living in urban areas? Unfortunately, many new housing developments do not retain existing trees, and with the wrong materials used to build houses or lack of insulation, they can become incredibly hot and difficult to cool during heat waves. As you all know, unshaded asphalt roads can reach higher temperatures during heat waves. Cities experience the urban heat island effect, and this can create a phenomenon which can make cities 4 to 10 degrees hotter than the countryside. We know that heat waves are harmful to human health. With these temperatures, doctors will see more patients with heat-related illnesses and more deaths related to heat strokes in vulnerable communities. There is an abundance of research that demonstrates a crucial part of response is planting trees. Research conducted during the 2017 heatwave in western suburbs of Adelaide, for example, found that the presence of trees and grasses lowered the land surface temperatures by 5 to 6 degrees compared to non-vegetated areas, making it easier for the local community to tolerate heat waves. Trees lower the surface and air temperatures by providing the shade. And in what we do know, for example, tree canopies that cover 44% of Brisbane local government area, but in the leafy parts of Brisbane, temperatures were reduced by 7 degrees cooler than in treeless areas. And as a result, by 2031, the Brisbane City Council aims to increase tree shade cover to 50% for footpaths and bikeways in residential areas. Densely built cities without many trees or green spaces absorb and hold heat, making them hotter than surrounding areas. Reducing the impact of this urban heat island effect is important for protecting health during extreme heat periods. There are worldwide efforts and strategies to develop urban forests and retain green spaces within an urban environment to help with air purification and climate regulation, recognising the health benefits these strategies have on our community. Studies and research demonstrate that planting more trees, encouraging leafy suburbs, green spaces, parklands and urban forests improve the general health of communities. This is a survey. It's called the Summer Heat Survey that was done earlier this year in regards to heat waves, and it was recently, what they did was survey 1,007 people and found that during heat waves, most people suffered more household tensions and impacted their relationships. Just over 14% said they experienced heat stress sufficiently badly that they needed to consult a doctor or seek medical care. Just over 94% of people suffered sleep deprivation, fatigue, poor functioning the next day, and the inability to work or study. Consequently, they also suffered financial stress, and some people were unable to access medical attention during heat waves. Extreme heat is a health risk, even in short periods, particularly for people who are more sensitive to heat, such as the elderly, the disabled, people with chronic health conditions, infants and children. Many lack the ability to adapt to the rising temperatures, especially if they suffer concurrent conditions such as heart, lung and renal disease. They can be more sensitive to the heat. Other vulnerable groups include the First Nation people, those living alone, the homeless, and those living in social or rental homes with limited cooling. Outdoor workers, sports competitors, and even healthy children playing outdoors during extreme heat can also suffer from heat stress. There is a link between poverty and areas where there are fewer green spaces. new research has confirmed that Victorians living in urban heat islands are likely to be more vulnerable to heat-related harms. Lack of access to shade and ventilation, inappropriate housing and urban design and development, and lack of access to air conditioners or energy supply further risks to heat strain. So what are some of the symptoms that that you can experience during heat stress? So people who are, sorry, I think, just, there we go. It is, so during, what are some of the symptoms? Feeling hot, reduced sweatiness, nausea, vomiting, headaches, migraines, feeling faint, weakness or fatigue, tiredness, cramps, breathing problems, dizziness, dehydration and loss of appetite. Heat can also aggravate mental health conditions, including increase the risk of suicide. Research has linked high temperatures to a whole range of mental illnesses, such as increased risk of anxiety and depression, as well as behavioural disorders such as aggression and domestic violence. People suffer aggravation of existing problems such as asthma, heart disease during heat waves. And as doctors, these are the presentations we see of patients who come in with heat-related problems, and particularly if they're dehydrated and they may not even put one and one together, not recognise it, but it's very common. So this is a really good chart here. On the left are the symptoms of heat exhaustion. On the right-hand side is heat stroke, when the body can no longer manage the heat and the body's core temperature rises too high, above 38 degrees, they develop heat exhaustion, but it can quickly turn into heat stroke when the body's temperature exceeds 40.5 degrees Celsius, causing confusion and reduced alertness and eventually death. Heat stroke is life-threatening, is treated as an emergency, and it is the most vulnerable people, like the elderly and young children, who are at highest risk here. What we find during heat waves is that there's an increased risk of and also presentation of heat strokes to emergency departments. There are more ambulance calls as well, and it leads to premature deaths. Also, as we know, with summer periods, Australia has the highest rates of skin cancer in the world, and the incidence of melanoma is going up. Now, of interest, the incidence of dying from melanoma is actually going down because we have better innovative treatments. And again, this is where trees provide shade and help prevent skin cancer. So now let's put it in perspective and relate everything that I've just mentioned to trees. A Canadian study found that children's physical development was higher amongst children with great exposure to outdoor green spaces, particularly tree-filled areas. A British study of adolescents found that being in woodlands daily was associated with higher cognitive development scores and a low risk of emotional and behavioural problems. Substantial research documents key differences between play occurring outdoors compared to indoors. Of great concern, a study of over 1,000 Australians demonstrated that less than 20% of our children participate in tree climbing today, compared with 65% of adults, such as my age group, who climbed trees during their childhoods. Reasons included high use of device screens, parents' lack of leisure time, and crime and safety concerns. Community surveys consistently demonstrate that playground users prefer more shade, particularly from trees, than built structures. A study of nearly 2,600 playgrounds in New South Wales of interviewing people found that 3/4 of playgrounds were shaded by the trees, and 58% the shade was dense enough to provide good UV protection, and that most people in the survey wanted more trees around playground areas. Trees also boost physical and mental health. Now, we recognise the benefits of blue-green spaces during the high times, during the high stresses, during the COVID pandemic lockdowns. Especially here in Melbourne, we went through severe lockdowns. And these spaces were critical not only for exercise, but blue-green spaces were beneficial for mental health, coping, and resilience, and spending more time outdoors. And research has shown that spending time more outdoors is much more beneficial. for our health. You all know this, but multiple studies show that green spaces, leafy suburbs with trees and parklands improve our health mentally and physically. Spending more time in nature helps our well-being, helps us to relax and exercise. We know that nearly half of the Australian adults today face some mental problems at some point in their lives, and evidence indicates that the closer we live to green spaces, the less likely we'll have depression, anxiety, mood disorders, particularly for children and people with low incomes. Another study found that if we spend more time in nature and around trees, it's associated with good health and well-being, and particularly if we lived within 1 kilometre of a nature reserve. Now, I've got references and studies for all these slides. I've actually written an article for our local council, and that was published. So you're all welcome to my article about this. Also, trees provide improves our quality of relationship with nature, and it has a positive effect on our well-being, particularly our mental well-being. Researchers use the term connectedness to describe the ideal relationship. Connectedness refers to the way we relate to nature and experience nature. A strong connection with nature means feeling a close relationship or an emotional attachment to our natural surrounds. So we also know that there are particular types of tree that improve air quality, and therefore consequently improves the health of the population, reduces the incidence of respiratory diseases, asthma and allergies. Certain trees can trap and filter pollen on windy days. Trees are also a key line defence against the emergence and spread of infectious diseases. So trees are known to also mitigate air pollution. So let's look into that. There are multiple sources of outdoor air pollution which can affect urban and rural areas. For example, industry, transport, busy roads, waste management, agricultural practices, dirt roads causing dust in the air, household energy, coal-fired power station. We know that air pollution is a major contributor to ill health and premature deaths in Australia. Trees remove fine particles of pollution from the air and can also absorb gaseous pollutants such as sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, which primarily come from burning fossil fuels and motor vehicle exhaust. This means trees make an important contribution to the health of people. In urban areas, the biggest source of air pollution is from vehicle emissions, also known as traffic-related air pollution or TRAP. Vehicle emissions contribute to multiple gases and chemicals that include carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, volatile organic compounds, and particulate matters, PM2.5, PM10, and ultrafine particles. All these gases are harmful to human health, and diesel exhaust is the worst. It's actually considered a class 1 carcinogen, contributing to increased risk of lung cancer. What is not well recognised is that even in urban environments, there are hot spots of high air pollution. We often think of freeways and big roads, major roads, of being highly polluted due to the high number of vehicles. But hotspots can occur in parking areas, in shopping centres, 2-minute drop-off centres at schools for children. And this is made worse when people idle their cars, for example, when they leave their air conditioner on to cool their car, and not realise, the majority of the community don't realise the harmful effects of the emissions, from tailpipe emissions. And you can see here, I picked this photo, the proximity of a child's head, face, lungs, that they're breathing tailpipe emissions when they're dropped off at a 2-minute parking spot and collecting their bag from the back. It's very common. It's something that schools need to be made aware of. Children exposed to vehicle emissions, especially nitrogen dioxide, nitrous oxide, and particulate matters 2.5 from traffic air pollution, develop poor lung function, and it increases the risk of asthma. In certain weather conditions, air pollution levels can also become worse. For example, where there's no wind, wind actually helps to move air pollution. During heat waves, warmer temperatures, when there's surrounding bushfires and cloud cover, all these factors make air pollution worse. Urban air pollution related to vehicle emissions increases the risk of morbidity, in other words, health problems, and mortality. A recent study by Melbourne University experts, of which I was the reviewer of the study, found that traffic-related air pollution is likely contributing to over 11,000 premature adult deaths per year in Australia. This is much higher than we previously thought. The reason for these findings is because what the Melbourne researchers did was gather the findings and studies of both particulate matters 2.5 and nitrous oxide and combined the findings and found that the effects were much more harmful on human health. What they didn't do was combine other pollutants such as sulfur dioxide, because that would almost certainly increase the risk of harm to human health. What I'm demonstrating here is how what happens when we breathe is the larger particulate matters gather into the upper airways, into the sinuses, the back of the throat, causing sinusitis, irritation at the back of the throat, and the finer particles tend to go deeper into the lungs. And what happens is that the pollutants are absorbed into our bloodstream and lodge into nearly every organ in the body and can impact the finer particles and gases can impact every organ in the body from the air pollution that we breathe. So we think it's outside, but it's not. We breathe it in from the outside. Consequently, what we find from research, it can affect virtually every organ. And I've got the research for all of this. So we know that when we breathe in pollutants, for example, just particulate matters 2.5 alone, it increases mortality, affects the heart, the lungs, lung development in children, aggravates asthma and allergies, can contribute to lung cancer, including people who are non-smokers, can increase the risk of stroke, dementia, psychiatric disorders, kidney diseases, diabetes, inflammation, can contribute to infertility, and also impact the child, the unborn child in pregnancy, contributing to low birth weight, just like smoking. Now, the sad news is that there is actually no safe level of air pollution in humans. So consistently with overseas studies in first world countries, there is no safe level of air pollution. There are harmful effects even with very low levels of exposure to particulate matters 2.5. And as mentioned earlier, it is the susceptible groups are children, pregnant women, the elderly, and people with pre-existing heart conditions. People who have lung and heart disease are particularly high-risk groups when exposed to air pollution. Now, proximity to air pollution is important too. So what we find is that communities that live next to or near highways, busy roads, freeways are at high risk of harmful effects from air pollution. Pollution levels can actually increase inside their house. And this is a study that was done through the CSIRO here in Melbourne that found that when you live within 50 metres of a busy road, and including other people who are exposed, for example, outdoor workers, we forget about road workers, they are so close to exposure to air pollution. Traffic officers, drivers, cyclists and pedestrians are at higher risk of exposure. So cycling, for example, you can see the proximity to tailpipe emissions. Very much concerns me. Furthermore, with population growth, we're seeing more and more cars on the road and consequently more air pollution, leading to more air pollution. So let's look at some of the solutions, and trees and vegetation are part of that solution. So here I am walking at our local coastal track. To my right, on the right-hand side, is a main road. It's Beach Road, and it's so heavily congested during peak hour traffic, back to back, bumper to bumper. And what trees do, and heavily dense vegetation in urban areas, acts as a great barrier to protect us from the breathing, the vehicle exhaust emissions, and exposure to air pollution. The leafier, the better. People who don't have a choice to move their house from main roads should be encouraged and made aware about the importance of retaining and planting more trees. The more trees, the more vegetation, the better. It can actually help act as a very good barrier from exposing us from air pollution. Including also, I'm concerned about pedestrian tracks and cycling paths along freeways because of the proximity to the emissions from the exhaust. And even there, all pedestrian cycling tracks should be designed to have a lot of vegetation. Unfortunately, trees don't stop all the noise barriers, so that's one of the problems I have when I still walk along my coastal track next to a busy main road. Trees also help maintain our connection to country and nature. Open spaces now become great opportunities for vegetation of trees, for our connection to nature, no matter where the location is, for the health of our community. We will lead healthier lives the more trees that we build around our communities and our houses. The community need to be educated. It is the key to helping people to understand why we need to protect trees and plant more. Urban designing is excellent. I mean, I think you're all aware of it and you've all heard from speakers, great speakers, but it's also making people aware of the benefits and how it will benefit them directly, the health of not only adults, but also children, physically and emotionally. For example, writing articles in community council newsletters of the health benefits of trees and urban forests. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to share my article and my slides with the studies to anyone who would like a copy. Just let Shelley know. You're welcome to contact me directly if required. In the education, there needs to be an emphasis on the benefits of also shade for cooling and protecting us from excessive sun exposure and skin cancer. The importance of exercising among trees to reduce air pollution. And I would also add the importance of avoiding idling our cars where possible. So on that note, thank you, and I hope I'm on time.